Do you remember when we were a kid and one of your friends was not happy with somebody? Not even necessarily friends, or some person you talk to at school or whatever, not happy with some dude. And you happen to talk to that dude. Let's call him Peter. So John is not happy with Peter. When you happen to talk to Peter, John gets very upset with you. And he doesn't want to talk to you anymore because you're talking to Peter. You remember that? Manipulative, isn't it? Yeah, we've lived in some of the harshest time in the world. People have changed, a lot of things have changed with time. Like, I remember, like, the strongest guy in class, if he's not happy with some person, or the strongest guy in your group is not happy with Peter, if you dare talking to Peter, yeah, they're going to push you out of the group, or, throw you to the wolf. Or punish you for some reason. Or you know what? They're going to go eat during pauses in the class. They're going to go eat out and they're not going to give you. Or they're going to call each other, go play a game and not include you. You've experienced that in the past. Crazy stuff. Yeah. Nothing to do with nothing, but yeah. Hope you're doing great. So the United States of America, thank you for being here. United States of America has expanded visa restriction. U.S. restricts visa for Ugandan and Zimbabwean official, citing repression. So the U.S. has decided, you know what, you're not coming in my house anymore. You can't come in my house. I don't want you here. Ugandans and Zimbabwe. Not like Ugandans and Zimbabwe are struggling or battling to try to get to the U.S. But you can't come here. You cannot come here because of repression in your country. So they're accusing Uganda of being one of the harshest anti-LGBT law, considered one of the harshest in the world. So they decided to say, Ugandans, your visa will not be processed. Okay. So US restrict visa to Ugandan and Zimbabwean because they feel like the Ugandan laws toward their internal policy, it's not good enough. It's repressive. Okay. And in fact, what happened was, a while back, Ugandans voted a law. They voted a law through parliament, passed a law against, men that want to be with other men, saying that it's not part of their culture, not part of their tradition. It's not acceptable to them. And also, so if you get involved, you can do whatever you want to do in your house, right? But don't come in the street and try and show everybody what you're doing. That's the law. So the United States of America, Washington is not happy about that. And they're very ready to act up on that. So the US on Monday expanded a visa restriction policy on Ugandan officials to include those it's believed are responsible for undermining democracy. Democracy. Is it USA democracy or Uganda democracy? I don't know. And repressing marginalized group in Uganda, while also announcing a new visa restriction policy for officials in Zimbabwe. So there's also visa restriction for Zimbabwean. In fact, Zimbabweans are not backing that. We're going to get into that. So Secretary of State Anthony Blinken announced the visa restriction and mentioned other issues. So the Ugandan anti-man law, considered one of the harshest in the world, was enacted in May and carries a death for aggravated an offense that includes transmitting HIV through men and men. Yeah. So basically, this is what it is. Ugandan says, if you, as a man, as a foreign person, you come into Uganda, come and teach Ugandans how to do that. You know what I'm talking about? You're in big trouble. Number two, if you are a man and you like other, and you happen to transmit HIV through, you're going to go, that's the law they voted. So the US is not happy about that at all. In June, the US Department imposed visa restriction against Ugandan officials. So they actually banned some Ugandans from coming to the US. I don't know how, I'm sorry, but hey, I don't know how Americans feel about America. Like, not everybody want to go to America. Do you know that? Do you understand that not everybody dream about America? And for the people who have been to America, they understand the United States is just another country, Yeah, big towers, big buildings, but the bottom line is Lots of people are suffering. People are working 2-3 jobs to make ends meet. A lot of issues. You can't really find a wife and stuff because people are just different. The mentality is crazy. Everybody's a man. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but yeah, I'm just saying. USA is just, there are nicer, much softer places to go. I'm just being honest with you. Places where there are much less resentment, much less hurt. People are just people. There's respect. They know who the father is, who the mother is. Everybody know the place and this space. And then there's actually love. People actually living with. Life in the States is not easy. Everybody's, everything is about money. Even relationships are about money. Like, how much do you make a year? That's America for you. Before you fall in love with somebody, the first one to know how much he makes a year. Like, what about values? What about you as a person? What about leadership? What about companionship? None of that means anything. What does he make a year? You see some of the videos online, people saying, so for you to give him a chance, how much must he make a year? Like, come on, man. My mother made much more money than my dad. She still respected him, honored him as he should, as her husband. And my father also, even though he made much less money than my mother, he always made sure that there was present for my mom. All the time. He would come home with, what do you call it, those African kitenge, African panye for my mom as a gift. And my mom go, So there was respect. There's a level of understanding and respect in a family. You understand who the lead is. Doesn't matter. It's not about money. It's about value. It's about honor. Okay, I don't see that in America. I'm sorry. So I don't know how many of these people are suffering from not going to United States. I don't know how many Ugandans and Zimbabweans are actually suffering from not going to the US. Visa restriction because you choose a law in your country. It's anti-democratic. I'm asking a question like, what's happening in Gaza? Is that democratic? I'm just saying, is that okay? Because you endorsing that. Like, there's lots of people out there that are really going through hardship, difficult situation. They were not involved in any sort of attack. They don't even know how to use weapons. Is that democratic? So you don't care about those people. You only care about the people that are in Uganda. People are busy doing their own things. That's what you care about. Come on, man. What are the priorities here? So a while back, you all know many African countries do not accept men and men to be together or women choosing to be with them. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Many people do it, under the radar. Many people will do it and not really expose that they are that way. So many African nations don't necessarily accept it openly. In some African nations, it's like a shame. It's like you know what I mean? So many African countries hold values, traditional values, as well as spirituality. They are Christians and Muslims. And they don't necessarily agree with that. That's their country. Can they choose their own laws, their own rules, their own way of being? Are they entitled to that? Can they do that in their own country, saying you cannot come here and teach us how to do that? Or is that a crime? Let me also put it this way for you. The Ugandan president has not been liked very much by the United States lately because he's been very vocal and very strong with his stance. After he lets that law pass, they threatened them. Okay, they threatened them. They cut aid. The USA used to send money for people living with HIV in Uganda. They completely stopped. About $300 million a year. That was the money they sent to Ugandan living with HIV. My question is this, and it will remain for a long time. If you were sending money, free money, wanting to help people living with HIV, why do you stop that? Because some people in certain offices decided to choose a law that doesn't fit with your profile. What does that have to do with the people with HIV? They don't vote the laws. Unless your initial idea was sending money to use it as a manipulative way of entering and, pushing your ideas, ideologies. Because how does that have to do with the people with HIV you're supposed to be helping because you're a good person? Are you not the bigger person, the democratic country? I mean, is that democracy for you? If you're going to cut the aid from the poor HIV people who've been benefiting from it, who do not vote the laws, is that democratic? I'm just asking. Please explain to me. I think justice is, judging somebody for what he does. If you're going to take somebody to jail, you're not going to take his mother to jail for the stuff he has done. then if you want to be fair, then limit whatever punishment you want to give to Uganda, to the Ugandan official, not to the poor HIV people. Does that make any sense? Shortly after he was pressured, President Museveni decided to go on a trip to Russia. That was at the heat of the battle between Russia and Ukraine, at the time where Russia and the Western nation were not getting along at all. He decided to randomly go to Russia. Yeah, he said, I'm going to Russia. I'm just going to go on a trip. I have not been invited, but I'm just going. Okay. He's a soldier. He fears nothing. And he's not the type of person you're going to bully around. Absolutely not. And I feel like the United States policy should be like some of the American politicians say. America's policy to the world should be that of cooperation, of building, of construction, of investment, of development, not of imposing people on how to think and how to perceive life. I mean, people are not 2 years old. They can clearly see what's right for them or not, what fits in their societies or not. You cannot take a technique or strategy that you call democracy and try and apply it to everybody. It doesn't make sense. If you go to every household, they are unique. They have their own way of operating. So you cannot take your way of living and try to impose it to the neighbors. It's not necessarily going to work. Even your relationships work. Look, if you had to know things about other people's relationship, you go like, wow, how do they do it? You'd be shocked. Many of you think you have bad relationships. I'm telling you, if you go out there and see how other people, other couples live, you're going to be shocked to see stories. Oh, he's got an incurable disease, but they kept it secret and they still live together and they're fine. Maybe you go like, oh, I wouldn't do that. You don't know what the neighbor's doing. So can America go to the world and say, I want to impose you democracy? Because democracy is what we live by. Just because you chose democracy doesn't mean everybody must do that. If they don't do that, then you must fight them. I don't know. What does Zimbabweans do? These people have been suffering for a while. They've been hit with sanctions. Why? Because Robert Mugabe, who is the ex-president of Zimbabwe, said it's time the colonialists give the lands back to the people of Zimbabwe. Because many years after colonialism, Zimbabwe actually was colonized by the British. The British occupied most of the land of Zimbabwe. Arable lands, all the positive, critical land were occupied by British people. They were the farmers, they were the producers. Zimbabweans were just consumers. And then Robert Mugabe came along and he said, you know what? This has to stop. You need to give the lands back to the Zimbabwean people. Was he wrong for doing that? They asked him to pay these people for taking the land. Okay, let me repeat that. The British came to Zimbabwe. They took the land by force. They installed themselves, created farms and many other things. They started making a lot of money and sending money back to Britain instead of injecting the money into the economy of Zimbabwe. They said to them, you are supposedly Zimbabweans. How come all your money is banked into British banks in Britain? Why don't you bank here? Then you're not Zimbabwean if you have to bank in Britain. You can't be Zimbabwe by paper and bank your money in Britain. So then they occupied the lands. They were living on the land. Zimbabwean people were just consumers. President Robert Mugabe said, enough, we're taking the lands back, we're giving it to the people. Then they asked President Mugabe to pay them money for the land. Then he said, why should I pay you the money for a land that doesn't belong to you? You took this land by force. Now we're taking it also because it doesn't belong to you. We don't have to pay you. That's when Zimbabwe was sanctioned by the US and many other countries. Many countries out there, if the US say A, they also say A. They don't think for themselves. I'm just saying. That's why Zimbabwe is persecuted. And they cut aids, they cut sponsorships, they cut access to funding, they cut everything, transactions. Zimbabwe was kicked off SWIFT. They couldn't buy things from outside or import things from outside. So creating a complete blockade. That's how Zimbabweans are going through difficulties. We cannot live in a policy of sanction. If you don't do what we say, we sanction. If you don't obey, we sanction. If you don't kneel down, we sanction. I mean, look at Cuba. Sanction. I mean, nobody likes sanctions. For what? Now, Robert Mugabe was supposedly the person that was sanctioning. But the reality is Robert Mugabe is an African president. He's rich. Now, if there's no bread, do you think the president is suffering? No, he's not suffering. The person who's suffering from the lack of bread, lack of beans, lack of oil is the normal citizen who has done absolutely nothing. Now, were they really punishing Robert Mugabe or they were punishing the people of Zimbabwe? It's the people of Zimbabwe who were punished Because the goal was by punishing the people of Zimbabwe, maybe they're going to kick off Robert Mugabe out of power. They didn't. Now, Robert Mugabe is no more. Years has passed, like many years ago he passed. But Zimbabwe is still under sanctions because the new president is not playing by the rules either. So it's not necessarily about democracy. It's about you going to do things we ask you to do. If you don't do things we ask you to do, we're going to sanction you. You have no access to funding, no access to World Bank, no cooperation with you. We're going to retract and cut off all the aid we've been giving you. Like, why Africans need aid anyway? You need to stop. Stop begging. You just beg, and develop a mentality of a beggar. That's what it is. You beg, you become a beggar. You unlearn how to look, how to build, how to create. Once again, America has extended its visa restriction against Ugandan officials because Uganda chose not to accept a law that America once accepted in Uganda. This is Uganda, is a different country. Here's Uganda. I hope you put the map. Uganda is a different country. It's a own country. They have many tribes, many culture come together. But you want an American point of view to come be imposed on Uganda. I don't know if this is fair. Let me know how you feel about this. It's always a great pleasure. God bless.